Yeah, I know, I know. Born on the battlefield. He's battle born. Yeah, a little babe comes into the world drenched in blood and gore. Pretty much like most babies anyway, yeah? But this one, because he's battle born in the middle of the chaos and blood and thunder of a huge limb lopping battle, it's going to mean he's going to become big and strong and muscle bound and huge and purely barbaric. Yeah, it's going to be one mean Hey, folks, how are you all? Kiltman here, Kiltman, at your cheeky whiskey swigging services, as usual. How are you all? Hope you're doing very well. Yes, as you will have gathered from the title of this video, I'm going to make good on that promise, or rather that threat, that I'm going to spend some time talking about the 2011 version of Conan the Barbarian, starring my man Momoa as Conan the Barbarian. Now, they took the title from the 1982 version, which of course, by John Milius and starring Arnold Schwarzenegger, is the one that we all hold dear. But truth be told, it's not that close to what Robert E. Howard, the creator of Conan, actually wrote in the first place. But it still is a magnificent, monolithic movie, which really set in stone the concept of sword and sorcery on the big screen. It had existed as a genre since the 1930s, earlier in fact, but it was cemented and totally, forged in steel and iron by Arnie and John Milius. It was inevitable, given that Conan the Destroyer came out a few years later, and then Red Sonja as well. But the magnificent run in the Marvel Comics, The Savage Sword of Conan, and then various reprints and then remakeovers with graphic novels and different artists coming on board, that Conan and that barbaric trend wasn't going anywhere. And in fact, it was definitely due for a bit of a reboot, revamp, reinvigoration. So, with Jason Momoa, the awesome Jason Momoa. I always say this, and yet he actually hasn't done that many things which are really worth shouting about. Yeah, Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. He spent most of that season 1, which he's in, dying on a big barbaric Dothraki couch. Didn't do a great deal, really, did he? Let's be honest. And a lot of his movies, like Bullet to the Head, Braven, Wolves, they're not that great now, are they? Let's be honest. But he's such a likeable, brawny bastard. And I do love Aquaman. And at the time, I was so looking forward to this reinterpretation. Marcus Nispel had done, this is the director, had done Friday the 13th reboot. And, God, what's the other one? Texas Chainsaw Massacre reboot. He is the demigod of reboots. Can't he come up with anything original? That's a husky plunging down the stairs there. She's heard her dad's voice and she's now like, I'm going to interfere with this. That's what huskies do. So he gets a big creative team behind him. The producers and the writers are all huge Conan fans. Now, they are. I know they are, because I've watched all the making of documentaries on the disc that came out for Conan the Barbarian 2011. And they definitely, a husky doth approach and slurp some water. Just gotta get involved somehow, haven't they? So you'd think with all these guys who are massively, supposedly into the legend and the mythology and the whole phenomenon behind Conan the Barbarian, that they really know their stuff, they know their metal, they know the riddle of steel. So they're going to come up with something good. How much of that are you going to drink? She's rattling round over there like a rag and bone man. Sorry, I will soon get back on track. But yeah, you'd think they'd know their stuff, and they're all very enthusiastic about it. Jason Momoa on the press junket was really saying, I love Conan, and those Frank Frazetta images, I just had to do this, and all this kind of stuff. Like, yeah, I bought into it. The classic image that Frank Frazetta first drew was of Conan atop a mound of bodies and skulls, looking sullen, dark-haired, brooding, mighty sword, mighty muscled. Momoa totally captures that look. Sadly, he's saddled with a film which really has all the ingredients that should make it one of the better versions and adaptations of a Robert E. Howard Conan story, and yet manages to completely derail itself by being so goddamn boring that it's unbelievable. They strove for a hard R rating. They had Momoa, they had the great Stephen Lang as the evil sorcerer Zim. They have Ron Perlman as Conan's daddy. They've got Rose McGowan as evil sorcerer Zim's daughter, who's a witch. And they've got lots and lots of blood and carnage and action and chases and all sorts of stuff. And yet, it's one of the most stupefyingly dull movies you're ever going to encounter, with a macho hero swinging a sword around for 99% of the running time. How they can drop the ball so spectacularly it's a true mystery. So, what have we got? Ron Perlman, big, massive, hairy-assed Ron Perlman is a big Sumerian chieftain. He and his people, many years before, have found and destroyed this mystical bone mask which can wrap itself around the wearer like a facehugger from Aliens, and it will bestow upon them awesome power. There's always a MacGuffin like this, and they defeat the forces of Acheron or Acheron, whoever they are, and smash apart this bone mask, and they spread the shards out around the different outlying villages of all these barbaric tribes. I mean, they're barbarians, but they kind of know, look, you're evil, you're using sorcery, we just use steel. So it's dispatched to all the far corners. But years later, Zim comes back, and Zim has got a mighty army of his own now, and he's reuniting all the bits, all the bone shards, to make that mask perfect again, so he can wear it, and with the power of his daughter and the blood of a pureblood. I'm not even sure who the pureblood race are meant to be, but he needs this girl and sacrifice her because she's a pureblood. And once she's got the mask on and they sacrifice her, he will then be able to bring back his witchy wife, who was dispatched at a burning stake many years before. So together, mask, witch wife, witch daughter. Well, that wife and that daughter. They can rule the world with all spectacular evilness, of course. You're just evil, you're a sorcerer, that's all you want to do. So, that's the thrust of it. Conan, little prosthetic, rubbery baby special effect, is born in the middle of a battle. At the opening of the movie, the prologue of the movie, he's born in the midst of a huge, swirling battle maelstrom. Mummy has been cut up and she's lying on the back of a cart when Ron Perlman storms over, and the battle seems to quieten down all the way around them, conveniently, so they can converse. And then Ron Perlman commits one horrifically quick and extremely skillful as well cesarean section on his already dying wife, and brings out this puppet baby thing, and what should we call him? Conan snuffs it. So in a scene that this film replicates so many times, the baby is held aloft and big Ron Perlman goes, ah! Yeah, because people do that sort of thing all the time, don't they? I crawl across broken glass and I get the last dregs of whiskey and I go, ah! Actually, no, I do that, yeah. Oh yeah, so it's true. Cut to a few years later, and young Conan, in this rather long prologue, is now, what would he be? He's going to be 12, 13, something like that. And obviously all the lads of the tribe have got a challenge. They want to join the men and become barbarian warrior hunters. They've got to pass this test. They've got to run, twice round the mountain or whatever it is with an egg in their mouth. Yeah, and come back and make sure you haven't cracked that shell. Otherwise, there'll be egg on your face, the yolk's on you. And Conan arrives late for this, but off he goes. And it's actually, now, if I appear to take the piss out of this movie, I'll say this right now. Forget the Battleborn prologue, which is bollocks, but this extended prologue bit, which is the origins of Conan, where he loses his father, where he proves that he's a fighter, a challenger, a warrior in the making, is actually really good, and I do enjoy it. So obviously all these lads take off around the hillside, and Conan's fighting to get past them all, and they're tripping each other. They've got to get back first. But around them, you've got these Picts, these Pictish warriors, looking a bit like Mohicans with like face paints and little mohawks. Savagely attack this lot, but Conan defeats them. Conan fights back. These are grown men, but his cunning and his savagery, he destroys them, and then he makes it back to the encampment. And like, well, where are they? And the crowd part, and Conan, this lad with his sullen face and his hair drenched in gore, comes back holding the heads of all these vanquished Pictish warriors, severed there. So it's just from there up, and he throws the heads down, and then he will learn how to deal with the riddle of steel. They don't talk about the riddle of steel. They just talk about knowing how to make a proper sword. What's most important in making a sword, Conan? Fire or ice? Fire. Ice? Are you sure? So they've just forged a great big sword. Big Ron Perlman, that's his full name, Big Ron Perlman. Goes bang and just smashes it into shards. No, the secret sun is both fire and ice. And then we get a lovely montage of constructing this sword. But the happy days are soon to end, because Zim, Stephen Lang, that sorcerer I mentioned, he knows the last bone shard of this mask is actually secreted in Conan's camp. So they head in there, a massive another pitched battle, and they fight. The daughter finds it, Rose McGowan. Actually, it's not Rose McGowan in that bit. They filmed a lot of this in Bulgaria, and it's a young Bulgarian girl playing a younger version of the witch daughter, which will grow into Rose McGowan. And they find the bone shard. They torture Conan's dad, and then they leave Ron Perlman with a great big cauldron full of smelting metal, and Conan's holding the chain and all that. Like, Conan's already hacked the nose off one guy and proved his worth as a little warrior brat. And Stephen Lang, who's a great villain, to be honest, he kind of likes Conan as well. So you've got this thing about like Thulsa Doom, this big sorcerer, badass villain who actually kind of begrudgingly wants to become a bit of a father figure, kind of looks upon Conan sort of dotingly. I wanted a warrior, I just got a witch. Well, whatever, So obviously Conan's dad will die. The smelting pot will fall on his head and he'll melt away, which does kind of bring back memories of something that Khal Drogo does in Game of Thrones, where another guy gets his head smelted, good style. So Conan then grows up, wants revenge, wants the sword back that they created, because that sword got taken away. So he wants to get his sword back, and he grows into Jason Momoa. Yes, unbelievable. And he's become a pirate, a barbarian, a warlord, a mercenary. His next opening scene, he'll rescue slaves from a big slavery caravan. He will bed wenches. Then he will stumble across the guy whose nose he hacked off. So he'll get himself flung into prison just so he can get to grips with this guy, because he knows that this guy knows Zim, sorcerer Zim. Zim, he's not just a bandit now, he's a Shadow Lord. The fuck is a Shadow Lord? Lord of the Shadows. It's cheesy, it's hokum, of course. So Conan will find out where Zim's supposed to be. Zim, in the meantime, he's now got all the bone shards together, but he needs the last of the purebloods, which is Rachel Nichols, who's in a monastery somewhere, a lovely idyllic monastery. So Zim's forces arrive, lay waste to the place, but in the nick of time, Rachel Nichols, the character's name, I don't remember, and I don't care, escapes in a carriage, horse and carriage sort of thing, an armoured carriage with a troop of soldiers to protect her. But in the meantime, Conan has learned the whereabouts, and he's arrived in the nick of time to watch Zim's warriors chasing this carriage across through the woods, through the gorgeous woodlands, and he will start fighting these guys, and he'll save the girl. He'll learn about this pure blood bullshit. He will meet his pirate friend. There's always a friend who can add a little bit of that bit of bonhomie, that companionship, that sort of rapport and banter, and explain little bits for all the entourage and onlookers and us, the audience. You know, when I first met him, he was just a little scroat picking pockets in Zamora. But little did anyone know it would be him who stole the elephant's heart, which actually is a reference to a Robert E. Howard story. So nice to put that in there. And he's like this pirate chieftain. He's got a ship which just arrives in the nick of time. Whenever like Conan and Rachel Nichols are on top of a mountaintop, who've just fought off these rather bizarre parkour, free-running sand demons. Fuck. And then they arrive on the edge of a cliff top. There's this galleon mercenary pirate ship just off the coast. And although it's an impossible distance, this guy's going, for Mitra's sake, jump! Mitra is a goddess in, all the Conan mythology. So the two of them will jump off and escape and get on the boat, and then, even though this boat's heavily guarded with lots of warriors and that, and Conan himself, a man of cunning, a man of power, is asleep below decks, Zim's men manage to actually get right alongside it and then lay siege to the ship. But they'll be fought off and beaten. And what obviously the makers thought was, we're going to give them a big sea battle as well. Yeah, well, lots of welters of CG blood added after the effect, flying past the screen. And a couple of good stunts, but there you go. So then Conan will realise, look, I know where he's going. She'll get kidnapped. The girl, the pureblood who he saved once before, Rachel Nichols, she'll get kidnapped again. So in a great big castle on top of a mountaintop in some other province, he will then infiltrate this, fight a huge Lovecraftian tentacled monster which is actually in the bowels of this big citadel. He'll meet some more guys that were present during his father's execution, and he will lay waste to them. He will save Rachel Nichols yet again in a nick of time, and he'll fight through the catacombs with Zim. Zim's daughter will get offed and impaled on a spike. Conan will destroy Zim, and oh god. And then basically what he does at the very end of the movie, he will ride off with Rachel Nichols back to the monastery which got destroyed and say, like, there you are, and she'll go, thank you. This is the end of the movie. Thank you, Conan. Thank you. You saved me, and you kept your promise. You brought me back home. And he just goes, okay, see you. And rides off. That's it. He rides off and then goes back to his, because he's now retrieved his sword, the family sword, the one that he and his father made together, the one with fire and ice together. And he'll do that thing, like I said before, with the baby. This film has lots of scenes where somebody holds something aloft and then just screams in warrior rage. And Momoa's done it several times already throughout the movie. Everyone does it, to be honest. And then he's finally got the sword back, so he goes back home and he sees, the forge where they actually made the original blade, and he'll wield it aloft, like that. In other words, yes, a franchise beckons. Come on. Except the franchise never came. Why? Because although this film has good star power with Jason Momoa, a great character actor playing the villain, Stephen Lang is an amazingly good actor, and he's also an amazingly powerful man. For an older bloke, he's about 57 when he made this. Riding horses, sword fighting. He's the guy in Avatar. He's the guy in Public Enemy. He is the guy in Don't Breathe. How can you make a guy, well, the character's meant to be in his 60s, who's blind, make him a really intimidating threat? An old guy who's blind. Well, get Stephen Lang to play him. Because Stephen Lang, an older guy, is buff as fuck. He is chiseled. And that's another good thing about this movie, is that it gives Momoa physically someone to fight against. Like, the main villain can actually look intimidating. So what goes wrong then? What goes wrong? Welters of CG, incredibly naff supporting actors, really crap CG map backgrounds. So you've got, in a nice attempt, they're trying to bring in the different locales and provinces of, the kingdoms of Hyboria. And you've got Zamora is there, other provinces are there, I forgot all the names now. But they're just digital paintings in the background. And they've got like they have it in Conan, they have it in Red Sonja. They've got great big prehistoric sort of mounds and things of historical relevance, great big skeletal remains, and Conan will ride beneath them. But because they're done in a very sort of dusty fashion, they're not vivid enough, and they don't deliver the visual, the sort of, chutzpah that you want. Citadels on mountaintops just look kind of hazy, and I know that's the look they've gone for, and they've thought this is going to look a little bit more pastel shaded and a bit more dusty and perhaps a bit more realistic, but it doesn't work. It makes it less interesting to look at, and the CG is not good. It's not good. The sword fighting is brutal, pugilistic, dynamic, but it's completely undermined by, although it looks good, it's great for the camera, but if you know sword fighting and you know swords, what they're doing is completely impractical and stupid. Because Conan, although Momoa can do it really well, he is spinning round and he's not doing backflips as such, but he's just twirling about, the sword's going all around him, and he'll do it just on a whim. Whoever he's fighting, they'll have to stop for a second while he just fucking skewer them. And they could have killed him while he's doing all this, but oh no, because it looks good, and Momoa can do it. Momoa does a lot of stunts. Momoa is not anywhere near the size of Arnie, but he does look like those Frazetta pictures of Conan. Before Conan, the imagery of Conan became super steroidal, massively hulking brute, ugly as fuck, like an absolute gargoyle. But there's always a woman, a voluptuous woman draped around his leg, hanging off him. He's got him over his shoulder, a big pair of pet buttocks like that. They are good images, But Momoa captures that. But when you actually see him, and he's lit pretty well, but when you see him behind the scenes, he's not that big at all. So, smoke and mirrors, folks, smoke and mirrors. But I do like the guy, and I think he could have played Conan. He could still do it. But you've got to give him a script. You've got to give him something to do. Don't give him those cheesy, shitty lines. And the dialogue in this movie is absolutely reprehensible. It's terrible. Rose McGowan, because the older daughter, years after Conan's dad's been smelted, that other girl grows into Rose McGowan. They don't look alike, but it doesn't really matter. And she's got a big slap head, a prosthetic piece is stuck on here, and the hair's back there. She has Freddy Krueger-like big claws, and she's potions and lotions. And when they get all these women, who any one of them could be the pure blood, although she's escaped, she's bugged out, and she will cut them somewhere and then lick the blood. No, that's not them. And she'll slash them in the face or gut them with these claws. And she's having a great time being a complete and utter badass bitch. But this was the girl that after this they wanted her to play Red Sonja in the Redux of Red Sonja, and it was the same production team and her husband Robert Rodriguez. It never got off the ground, and I'm quite thankful for that, because although she's pretty good as you hate it in this, I don't think she could carry off the complete voluptuous, dexterous, athletic, violent, balletic uber vixen of violence that is Red Sonja. I don't think she could do it. I don't think so. Hey, prove me wrong, give her a shot, but let's get a proper Red Sonja movie out there. But on the basis of this, as I say, it's got all the ingredients there. Sorcerers, lots of action, lots of different locations, lots of name dropping of places and things from the Robert E. Howard mythos. It's all there. And you've got a central guy, Conan, who looks the part. But he's just, the action is repetitive and boring. Yeah, some of the gore is meant to be outrageous. I'd say the first half of the movie is by far the nastiest. In fact, even the first quarter is the nastiest. The guy whose nose got hacked off, when he finds him and goes into the prison, and the guy's wearing a mask to try and cover his disfigurement, Conan, who's already took over the place, takes the mask off him and sticks his finger right into this bloody hollow, and the guy pisses himself. And you hear the finger inside, like that. And that's a nice moment of extreme, gratuitousness. But that's it. After that, you may have lots of bouts of blood bursts and CG wallop gore everywhere. A couple of heads coming off, a hand coming off. One of Zim's minions is launched on a catapult through the air to smash into Zim's carriage in a big procession. But it really isn't as nasty as you think. It just isn't. And yet they boasted it was going to be really blood and thunder, absolute gore aplenty. There's more bone-crunching violence, certainly, in the original Arnold Schwarzenegger Conan the Barbarian than there is in this. But, as I say, I'm kind of at a loss as to really pinpoint where it goes wrong. You have a great star charisma guy playing Conan. You have all the elements that should make it right, which are the epitome of any good Conan story. An evil sorcerer, a prophecy, a curse, lots of battles. And, how can you go wrong? Because Marcus Nispel is a really boring director. Even with material like this, and, lots and lots of action set pieces, he cannot give you any momentum, any kind of excitement, any enjoyment to it. It just doesn't seem to flow as a proper dynamic action adventure movie should do. It bores you whilst you're watching it. It bores you in mid-action set piece. That is an absolute complete crime. That takes some skill to make an action set piece with swords and chaos and blood and gore and flashy tits. Make that boring. Make you just switch off when it's on. You've got a score by Tyler Bates. It's playing right now. Now, there's a really soppy sort of main theme. You're not talking Basil Poledouris here. There's no tribal, ancient, Celtic, pugilistic, absolute dynamic sort of scoring. It's kind of generic. Well, it's totally generic. Now, Tyler Bates, I sung his praises when he scored 300. I loved it until I discovered that he'd ripped off the best bits from Elliot Goldenthal and his score for Titus. And that is a very infamous story that he did that. So, we do not give him any benefit of the doubt. And this, moments of flourish, but it's just generic. This is sleep composing, what he's done here. So, as I say, the script's diabolical, a good villain, but a rather lacklustre finale. He may fight Conan for a fair bit around his catacombs of yet another collapsing citadel. Big rocks thundering down, rope bridges they've got to get across. There's even a really drawn out fight where Rachel Nichols is on a sacrificial wheel which has dropped down this huge pit. And again, yes, there's a sea of lava beneath there. And Conan will jump down to rescue it. Zim will jump down. So a bit like Flash Gordon and Prince Barin on this tilting disc in Flash Gordon. They've got this fight and they're spinning round and they're trying to catch chains and swing back up. There's all the elements of a great deal of excitement and little set piece vignettes, and yet you don't care. You genuinely don't care. Such a shame. And there's a god awful line in it, which it's Rose McGowan saying, because that bone mask, she says something like to her, she whispers in her father's ear, and there's a hint of incest there as well, which is a bit, you just don't fucking need it, to be honest. you know, maybe I could be mother. And she's like, and he's just like, you'll never replace her. And all that. Because at least he's got a bit more than just wanting to, well, domination. He actually wants to bring back his wife, his lost love. So they actually got an element there which they really should have maximised on. But no, they didn't. But she says something to him like, it took a barbarian sword to destroy the mask, but now a barbarian sword, the same fucking sword, will now resurrect the bone mask. Now, that I made that sound even more dynamic. That when she says it, it seems to go on for half an hour in a monotone, and you're like, will she please stop saying this line? It's just gone on and on and on. Folks, there's maybe more I could say about it, but I don't want to. It's not worth your time and effort. It was also, there's a 3D version of it which I've got, which is literally headache inducing, and I love 3D, but it's not a good 3D version. It really isn't. So, chaos, action, parkour with sand demons, which look like just pure video game, and really shite video game at that. Terrible. Running at super fast speed, but they're made out of fucking sand, for God's sake. I don't know. No, Momoa, you are better than this. You proved that with Aquaman. You've got screen presence, you've got charisma. You could own Conan, you could. Hopefully you get another chance. Folks, I will be back, because at some point soon I am going to do the granddaddy of them all, the original Conan the Barbarian. So folks, I have been and always shall be Kiltman at your service. So please keep it Celtic. No, keep it kilted, keep it Celtic. I always get that bit wrong. And I'm going to see you all. A barbarian sword destroyed the mask. The mask was destroyed by the barbarian sword. The mask will now be rebuilt and reforged by a barbarian sword. Have you got the barbarian sword? Oh, forget it.